goal of product market fit is customer retention while the usage is growing. Because at this point, the mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make, try to go from, depending on what you're building, let's say from 6 customers to 20 customers. That's not the goal. The goal in this phase one is not defined so much by 6 customers to 20, but it's really by how many of the 6 can you retain? If any of them churn, why did they churn? And ultimately, could you get 4 of them to fully retain before you think about expanding a lot faster?
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where the best SaaS companies are like the best restaurants. They keep people coming back for more, and if done right, they'll tell everyone they know. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. What if the key to scaling your SaaS business isn't just top-line growth, but keeping the customers that you already have? Too often founders, I think, focus on acquisition. It's a fun part of building a business, pouring resources into marketing and sales, only to realize way too late that they have a much bigger problem, and that is the churn monster that's chasing them. Yeah, if customers aren't sticking around, it doesn't matter how many new ones you bring in, your business will feel like a leaky bucket constantly needing to be refilled. And a crazy story, one of the companies I worked with a while back, they would sign up 1,000 new users a month to net 80. That was their goal. They could just net 80. So they would sign up literally 1,000 and they would lose 920, but it was still a gain. And it was still something that was investable and people were really happy. Like, are you kidding me? That's insane. That's why in this episode, we're shifting the conversation from just growth to sustainable growth. And one of my favorite words, future proof. Our guest today is breaking down what it takes to really build a high retention SaaS company, starting with a fresh perspective on market product fit. And that's a little backwards. Market product fit. Yeah, market first. And we'll discuss why understanding your customers' needs before building your product leads to stronger adoption, better retention, and ultimately a business that grows itself. Sounds pretty good, right? But keeping customers isn't just about having the right product. It's about how you engage, support, and then iterate that development. And we'll explore how AI powered customer insights can help predict and prevent churn before it happens. The art of strategic feedback collection, because not all customer requests should shape your roadmap. I mean, a lot of them honestly shouldn't at all. And why the most successful companies are obsessed with making sure customers experience undeniable value fast. And I mean lightning fast. And then let's talk about teams. As your business scales, how do you ensure your company stays customer centric? We'll dive into team structuring for growth, making sure that every function, whether it's product or marketing or customer success, aligns around a repeatable, scalable process that delivers real results. If you're tired of watching customers slip away and maybe you're ready to fine tune your retention strategy and looking for real world tactics to build a SaaS business that not only grows but thrives, again, future proof, then you won't want to miss this episode. Let's dive in. Our founder on Tuesday was David Tabachnikov, CEO of Scholarship Owl. He revealed how AI is transforming Gen Z marketing and higher education funding. David explained how brands can use scholarships as a strategic marketing tool while helping students graduate debt free. And one of my favorite parts about the episode is we explored a two-sided marketplace, how to build that, and he's done amazingly well. And our expert guest last week was Rajiv Nathan, Raj Nation, founder of Startup Hype Man. He shared how storytelling can change the way startups pitch. He introduced the K-PASA formula, a framework for making pitches emotionally compelling and investor ready. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. Such good content there. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. They are absolutely fantastic. My guest today is Mohan Rao, Chief Product and Technology Officer at Knownwell, where he leads product innovation and strategic direction. With a career spanning leadership roles at SaaS greats like WageStream, StreetShares, Hobson's, and Mobile Insight, Mohan has built and scaled high growth technology businesses for quite a while. He is here to share how companies can drive rapid product innovation, align technology with business vision, and create scalable solutions that deliver both customer value, shareholder returns. Welcome, Mohan Rao. Hey, Mohan, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Jeff, thank you so much. Really appreciate this.
Well, you've led product and tech at multiple SaaS companies and driven several successful exits, which is pretty awesome. What are some key lessons from, earlier in your career still influence how you build and scale companies today?
There are so many things that goes into building a successful company. You've got to start with the team and the cultural aspects of the team right from day one. And who you have around you in the initial days makes a huge difference, right? So generally, kind of with all the various companies that I've worked in, within the first 2 to 3 years, you're going to know what's going to happen later on, right? So there are very few experience I've had where things never go great right off the bat, right? So there's always challenges and pivots and all of that. But you got to kind of find a kernel of an idea that resonates in the market. You've got the right team around you to build that and keep making that advantage that you got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. As I look at sort of the past experiences, finding that one thing that your customers find it useful, and you have the team to make that bigger and bigger, whether it's on the product market fit side or on the go to market side. Those are the really important things to build a significant business.
Very cool. One of the things that you emphasize is the importance of market product fit over product market fit. And those two things kind of sound the same, but very, very different. What are the differences that you see? And why is that shift and flipping those two terms so crucial for SaaS founders?
Yeah, I think of it often because product market fit, generally the idea that people have is you have a great idea and you're gonna build a demo or a prototype, and then you're gonna take it into the market, and if you build they will come because your idea is so powerful, right? So that's what, to me, this direction of PMF to me says, that you're taking product to the market. I think a better approach is to go the other way, and you start with the market, and you think about what are the customer pain points, what are the customer innovation that you can truly that would resonate with them, and then you form the product idea, and then you bring the market into your product, so to speak, right? But
Right.
in truth, the it's an iterative process, so you got to go both ways, product to market, market to product. But building technology for its own sake is not a recipe for success. Now, there is a view out in Silicon Valley where you build great technology, sooner or later, people will realize, and you create a market around it, and everybody wants to quote Steve Jobs and others. But there was
Right.
only one Steve Jobs for 10 million mere mortal entrepreneurs out there, right? So I think it's really important to go both ways and be thinking about the market. And market is really kind of a fancy term to say your customer base and who you're trying to attract, and the problems that you want to solve.
I think that happens a lot, and it's really tempting. Especially, a lot of the founders we work with are technical, and that's they just see solutions. They see a problem like it's got to have a solution and build a product, and then who do we go sell it to instead of validating the market need? I think that's really important, and just doing that first and building it for the market. What are some other maybe early stage mistakes that you see specifically around product strategy?
Yeah, I mean, generally, who you talk to is really important as well. Sometimes you can end up talking to the people you know well, and it could become an amen chorus of, "Oh, that's a great idea.
Right.
This is gonna work, right? So that is so good." There is that sort of who you talk to is really important, and you got to get different voices in there and reach out to a lot of people, some of which you may not like, some of which they may be wrong about, right? They don't see the opportunity. But I think just talking to a lot of people initially to do the research is really, really, really important. And before you plunk down, you can always build a low cost POC that you'll take out so that it makes it easier to explain your idea. But plunking in a lot of precious dollars in right at the beginning before a lot of research generally is not a good idea, if you ask me. Technology is a weapon, but ultimately what you're creating are solutions.
That's a really good way to look at that. And it's becoming a lot easier to build those POCs. I mean, what's your take on, whether it's a wireframe, whether it is, something that you're using like low code or no code, or even just mock-ups in something like Figma to do that. What's your take on how far down that road do you go before you really do the big dev investment?
Yeah. I think it can be any of the ones that you mentioned that allows people to get a good view on what it is that you're building. If you are building a very data centric product, unfortunately people will need to see their data in your product, otherwise it doesn't make that much sense to them,
Right.
right? So ultimately these are all conversation starters, as well as for you the entrepreneur, it's about reading in between the lines, because nobody will tell you what the answer is, right? They're all kind of sharing their opinions, and you're now trying to collate all of these dots together to say, I think this is where the nugget of truth is, and this is what I'm going to go after. So I think it can be any of the ones you mentioned. It can be a Figma markup. It can be a low code tool. It can be a very quick prototype. It can be any of that, depending on your product type or product idea that you're building. Probably saying that, starting out with Figma is going to be the least cost, followed by low code, followed by a little bit of dev investment to get a POC going, just to make sure that people can see it and they're reacting to the product as opposed to reacting to your description of the product.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Well, I like that, reacting to the product, not just the description of it, because it's different when they can actually see it and they can kind of visualize what's going on and how it solves the problem. Where if we're just explaining it, they may have one idea in their head and say, "Yeah, that's a really good idea," but what we're actually telling them is something that's completely different. And if those were the same, they'd go, "No, that's not exactly what I thought."
Exactly. You know, it's so important that you also let them play with it as opposed to you're demoing it yourself,
Mm,
right? So because it always unlocks better conversations, better ideas. In general, what I've found is people are very generous with their time and ideas, right? So if you approach them the right way, but you got to help them give you the best ideas, right? So, and if you try to sell with a lot of emotion, sometimes it backfires, right? Because you're really kind of on a mission to find the problem that you want to solve, right? So sometimes I think the mistake people make also, Jeff, is they oversell the problem, that kind of becomes a barrier in terms of people giving you good feedback. So it's almost like you need to say enough and then just listen and listen and listen.
oh, that's smart. I know I found it when you said that. It just made me think about somebody. I mean, it's like a hammer and looking for a nail. Everybody is a nail, and it's just that's it. It's just really excited about the product and wants to go sell it to everybody. Which the opposite. You can build a great product and never tell anybody about it. That's not good either. So it's somewhere in the middle. But I like that where you're really showing it to them or having a conversation and putting them in the driver's seat and just understanding how it is they're thinking about it. How would they use it? What problem do they see it solving? And how important is that problem to them?
It's so well said. You're so well said. You want to sell enough in quotes so that they get the idea, but
Yeah.
then you want them to just kind of experience it enough for them to give you good feedback.
How do we know what feedback to take and what feedback not to listen to?
And that is such a good question, and it's so hard, right? So you've started the company because you believe you have a conviction in your idea, right? And so there are some principles that you got to lay down right at the beginning and say, these principles I'm not going to deviate from, right? Because I see the market go this way and I'm not going to, but that can be a little more abstract in nature, right? So it can be more directional because ultimately most entrepreneurs are very conviction people and they are very strong with this, and
Yeah.
that's what makes them successful and that's what makes the company successful in the end. But everything beyond that needs to be very loosely held. All right, so you're taking the feedback in and you are triangulating, right? So it's an art in terms of whether truly this idea is going to fly or not. If you've experienced it yourself initially, yourself in your past career, that's going to help a lot because then you know that this is a real problem to solve. But even when you don't know, you just have to believe in the process of saying, listen, even though I've gotten 20 people to say this is a great idea, I'm going to speak with 400 people, right? So, right, because I want to find discordant voices out there. So ultimately, you're trying to form a thesis before you do a version one. You can call it MVP, perhaps, and then you put it out there. And when you put it out there, that's where the real test is, Jeff. As you know, either
Yes.
they're going to use it or not use it, right? So if they don't use it, it tells you everything you need to know, right? So if they're finding it valuable, that is another thing, and then you build on it. So initially, you have a set of principles. You're collecting a lot of information, interviews. Then you have some conviction about the problem space. You do an MVP, you put it out there, because the first part of the journey is all about the product market fit, right? So it's about, is the usage growing or not? That is the bottom line question, right? So you're still not worried about go to market as much. In this phase one, you're really thinking of it as PMF or MPF, whichever way you want to call it, and making sure that the usage is growing.
Yeah. Well, beyond usage, once we get that usage, we get some clients, we start to scale. One of the big things that founders are always trying to outrun is the churn monster, and staying ahead. And it becomes much more difficult to maintain growth, especially rapid growth, because of churn.
Yeah.
So, what's your approach to that, and making sure that customer retention doesn't become an afterthought as a company scales?
Yeah. So important, right? So I think that is literally, it makes the difference from going from what I think of it as phase one to phase two, which is from product market fit to growth market fit. Just have to focus. The sole goal of product market fit is customer retention while the usage is growing. All right, so you're, because at this point the mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make is to try to go from, depending on what you're building, let's say from 6 customers to 20 customers. That's not the goal. The goal in this phase one is not defined so much by 6 customers to 20, but it's really by how many of the 6 can you retain? If any of them churn, why did they churn? And ultimately, could you get 4 of them to fully retain before you think about expanding a lot faster? Because the precious dollars you have initially, you have to put it towards customer retention. Generally, it means, building the right set of features, enough value for them, making sure that you're getting your product to a point where the usage is growing. And Jeff, in this, you're not caring about pricing as much, you're not caring about unit economics as much, but you're really saying, what is the customer retention? Is the usage growing? Are they finding this valuable? Can I get to a handful of happy customers? Right? If you can get there, everything else comes later, right? So, because if you try to mix all of this, then you're going to get stretched too thin and it's really hard to build a lasting company.
Yeah. And it's not only SaaS companies that struggle with that. Services companies, huge issue, especially as they scale up. And how does Knownwell solve the problem for services companies around retention?
Thank you for that question. What we're building is an AI platform for commercial intelligence for professional services companies. So if you think about the professional services market, Jeff, you have services companies that get to about $20 million, $30 million revenue when they're successful, right? At that point, companies, the owner can say, it's a good lifestyle business for me. I'm going to just leave it there and just keep running it. That's where many of them end up. Then you've got on the other end of the spectrum your Accentures and large consulting companies, professional services companies that are usually run in a partner model. And if you notice, it's a barbell with nothing in the middle.
Right.
Right? So that's how services companies are. And as we thought about the idea for Knownwell, we wanted to build what we call commercial intelligence. This is about, client intelligence, engagement intelligence, your delivery in terms of how you're performing for the client, and then help with land and expand opportunities, help with retention opportunities. And we're using an AI platform, using LLMs to build our platform.
So how are you using the LLMs and AI to transform professional services?
Yeah. So professional services are a very relationship business. Like
Yeah.
people are talking to people all the time, right? The delivery team is talking to their clients, the account managers are talking to their clients, everybody is talking to each other. That's what makes what the very fact that you can provide great services to your clients also inhibits your growth. So what we're doing, because it's a a business, and a relationship business does not scale as well as a SaaS business or a financial services business. So what we're doing is we are taking all of what we call the natural information flows: email, calendar, Slack messages, Zoom transcripts, getting all of those people to people communications, mixing it with structured data, and then running it through an LLM to come up with scores to say, and we have a model. We obviously have both SaaS experience and services experience. And we're using that to come up with a score to say, here is the commercial propensity for the client to keep engaging with you on a bit on with services. So by ingesting all of that information, the natural information flows, you can then say, here are the retention issues with these clients. Here is what is common between 15 of your clients that are experiencing a problem with your service delivery. Here are the growth opportunities, and be able to provide that sort of intelligence layer to all the client facing people, whether it's on the delivery side or on the account management side or on the management layer, and for them to provide better services to their clients and help scale their business.
So how do you do that when you have multiple sources like that? I mean, of course, tech stack. I think we all deal with that, but particularly in professional services, like you said, you have the human communications. You know, it could be a social media aspect. You do have some of it digital, so email and Slack and those kinds of things. But then you've got just you have phone calls, you have Zoom meetings, you have face to face meetings. Yeah, how do you aggregate all that and really make it to where it's something that's usable? And we get like an ocean of data.
Yeah.
How do we make that where it's usable?
Jeff, this is the literally the last big untapped treasure trove of data in an enterprise. Because we all work remotely now, and we are all on Zoom calls or whatever calls,
Yeah,
Teams, whatever,
sure.
including soft phones like Dialpad,
Right.
RingCentral, and others. All of these produce transcripts, right? And being able to take all of that information in, and obviously what we are building is technologically fairly sophisticated, because you got to now mix in Zoom calls with emails, with Slack messages, and just getting all of that together and be able to analyze and put information out and say, oh, I suspect this client is not doing as well this week as it was doing last week. All right. And here are the three major issues going on with this client. Usually, somebody in the company knows about it, right? So, because they're dealing with it with the client.
Makes sense.
But not everybody knows. And what our product does is be able to take all that and just be able to spread that information out to everybody else, so the company can work in a collaborative way to solve the problem.
That's smart. Making it where it really is actionable, and so they can work together to solve the problem. It's not just a bunch of information.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
The other issue also is things rarely go bad within a week. But what happens
that's
is when
true.
it is like 6 weeks of not good things happening means a client churn. So that's sort of what happens, right? It could be something very innocuous where the somebody at the client says, "Hey, when can you send me the contract? When is our SOW expiring?" Right?
Right.
Just some a signal like that can help so much, because in the moment the account manager may not think much about that request, and they're saying, "Hey, this is the document we both signed, let me send it to you." Right? But just being able to get all these dots connected and knowing that something is not going well, somebody asked for a review or somebody escalated to the vice president of the company, just sort of being able to get these early warning signals or helping. We have live customers, live paying customers, and we're working with them to perfect the product.
Oh, that's good. Even when you said that, I mean, my antennas are going up. Somebody asked for a contract, something like that. It's time for intervention now. 'Cause it's a really, really good signal. But you have to be able to know that, and unless the account manager is thinking that same way, it's something that could easily slip by, and then, like you said, they don't leave in a week, but these things build up or happen over 6 weeks, and then they're gone, and you're like, "What happened? That was so quick."
Exactly.
That's just because we knew about it a week ago
Yeah.
and not 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah. And a good test of why this is a real problem is these issues were not happening when the company was younger, right? When you had like 10 people and
Right.
the owner was dealing with most of it himself or herself, right? The human brain was doing all of this connective work, right? And you can do this connective work in the human brain for I don't know how many, like let's say 15, 20 clients. And after
Yep.
that, it's impossible to do it. All right. So
Yeah.
then you have to build a structure. When you build a structure, you're no longer the principals, you have other people doing it. And at some point, this dilutes. And then you get a big contract, you lose another contract, and there is this zigzag of operations that happens in a services company.
Ready to dominate your market and skyrocket your revenue? Dive into Small Fish Big Pond, delivering a world class business that swims circles around competitors. This book is packed with powerful marketing and leadership insights guaranteed to transform your business and operate world class. Small Fish Big Pond delivers proven strategies to sharpen your marketing message, deliver unmatched value to your clients, and guide your prospects' buying journey to one inevitable conclusion: that your company is the only solution for them. Inside, you'll find step by step frameworks and time tested growth principles to attract your ideal clients, convert them, and then turn them into your passionate brand ambassadors. Grab your copy today in print, ebook, or audio at smallfishbigpond.com or on Amazon. Plus, remember, every book sale supports charity. All profits go there. Always have, always will. So dive in and make a difference. So, what do you think some of the essential skills are for startup success and to get to that point of scale?
Scale is sort of an aspiration, right? So right now, initially, you're looking for the product market or market product fit, right? So you have a
Mm,
handful of customers. You're trying to now get to a point where you have a stable base of handful of customers. They are happy. Now it is time to figure out the go-to-market fit, right? So start thinking about what does it mean for sales to be growing. Initially, if it was about usage is growing, the next two phases are about the scale is growing and the demand is growing, right? So those are two different things that comes after the usage is growing. And what is really important is here the go to market is codified and is scalable, right? So if you do certain things, that you get a sale, right? You have some element of repeatability here, right? So initially you're doing everything bespoke in sales, like whatever it takes to
sure.
get your customer. And then in the second scale phase, you're trying to figure out a repeatable process and you're starting to think about educating the market perhaps, but it's really about figuring out a good codified way to scale the go to market playbook. All right, so that is the main goal here. And while you're doing that, perhaps you can take the next step after that, which is sales is growing to demand is growing. And the way you get to demand is growing is to figure out how to get your marketing engine running, where customers are telling other customers that, hey, I'm using this, right? So these are all difficult as stages to get to, but those are the big ideas around the go to market phase.
Yeah. And as we're building out that team, you've had a number of different roles, chief product officer, chief technology officer, COO, wide range of leadership roles, which I think gives you a really unique perspective. What are some key things we need to be thinking about in building up those teams and creating teams that are ultimately very successful?
Yeah. At this phase, Jeff, as you know, you're starting to build an entire organization, right? So you have a
Right.
sales team, you have a marketing team, you've got a technology team, so on and so forth. And these are now becoming more functional areas within a company. The thing that you're starting to think about is how do you make each of the functions efficient, but even more importantly, you're saying, how do you make the whole process efficient, right, for a customer? Literally looking at this as a customer journey in terms of how they get to know you, how can they raise their hand to get to know you better, how can they perhaps run a trial, how do you buy, how do they buy, how do they use, how do you do upsells, and starting to think putting all of these pieces together is really important, because what you're now starting to think about is this a repeatable process, and is there some sense of the unit margins are there, meaning there is scalable unit economics, right? So the more you sell, your gross margin stays healthy, right? So that's the whole idea of SaaS, right? So
Right.
which is as you're selling more and more, it's not costing you as much anymore. All
Right.
right, so just kind of focusing on these and having the right leadership to get to these process building phase is very important, and as you scale for the market.
So, how has your process or approach to leadership evolved across the different positions and roles and companies?
I used to be a lot more structured thinker than I am now, right? So I used to be very much of a hero, like the four phases and four things, right? So I'm much more sort of focused on culture building, team building, understanding who, as you're scaling, especially who your primary team is, right? So a lot of companies make the mistake as they're scaling to think of the team under their team is your number one team, right? So just kind
Right.
of being very cognizant that your number one team is sort of your executive team if you're an executive, right? So you are operating the business as an executive group. The other thing that is really important as you're scaling that I found is being in the details enough, right? It's very, initially when you started the company, you knew every customer, you knew everything that was going on, and then you recruited enough people that you don't know much of what's going on. You become like an administrator or a figurehead, right? So because I think the product market fit challenge happens at every stage, right? So right, it's not just that you met product market fit and then you achieved it and you got it forever, right? So the if you think of it as really kind of different plates on an axle, things can get off, misalignments happen all the time. So you got to be enough in the details to keep fixing it, right? There could be new competitive pressure that comes in. That means the value prop got disrupted now, right?
Right.
So that you need to do something else about it. So you're constantly being vigilant about this, being in the details. I think of it as, Jeff, always knowing like two clicks below what you're supposed to know, right, so yeah, like generally I'm expected to know this, but I know like two clicks of more details. Now that doesn't mean you want to micromanage any of that. You just know the details and you let people do their things, right? So that you're still very useful to the team when it comes to troubleshooting. That's Those are all the important things as you're scaling.
And as you start to do that, I mean, you brought up something I think is interesting is you have your team and then you have teams underneath that. Once you get beyond 2 layers, I mean, certainly by 3 layers, there's separation there. How do you maintain that culture and continue driving forward because you don't have that direct influence over 2 layers down? I think that's a big challenge for a lot of leaders.
Yeah. It is such a hard problem, right? So first of all, as you're going along, right from the purpose for which you started the company, the core mission of the company is something that everybody understands and binds everybody in the company, right? It can't be something that is meaningless, right? So it's got to truly, when there's a true purpose to the organization, it helps a lot in molding the culture, right? So it could be about, we offer excellent client service, right? So just being very passionate about it, right? I've been lucky in my career to work with, working capital for small business owners in education technology, serving students and helping with graduation rates, right? When you have something as meaningful as that, and really focusing the company on why we exist is really important. You got to start there, and hopefully every business can get to a mission that the team that you have recruited, or the people that you've recruited have recruited other people, all believe in the mission. And and then after that, you have to build healthy teams. So you got to kind of think of the executive team as a healthy team. Each one of the functional areas is a healthy team. The cross functional collaboration is something that you have to pay a lot of attention to and make sure that happens. And there are very few people, I think, at scale leadership level can truly think enterprise, meaning I think across the board. And whenever you find them, you have to make sure you keep them and you promote them. And if you don't have that, obviously over time, just kind of figure out how to get the right people in the leadership positions. And having connections with each of the team members will help as well. You can do skip levels, you can find avenues, whether it's through a hackathon, but you're constantly emphasizing the purpose of why you exist and why we do the work.
That's good. It's hard to keep that, through acquisitions and on both sides, whether you're buying companies or, being acquired. You've done that successfully a few times, successfully scaled through acquisitions. What is, we'll say, one critical factor that determines whether an acquisition will accelerate growth or become a costly mistake?
Yeah. I find the number one thing you got to do in an acquisition, beyond knowing why you acquired them, right? So, like,
That's important.
having the real thesis. Did you acquire them for a product? Did you acquire them for the customer base they have? Did you acquire them for, why did you acquire? Just knowing that and keeping that in the forefront is really important. But beyond that, the most important thing is knowing whether you're going to fully integrate them or leave them alone, right? I've found that every time you do something in the middle, always fails, right? If you're going to fully integrate them, right, then you're really kind of exporting the cultural values. You can take some of the values that are good in the company that you're acquiring and meld it into that is like an importing of the value, but ultimately getting to a cohesive team and fully integrating them, that in 12 months time, they should not feel like they're a different company, that you're one company in every sense of the term. Everybody believes it, everybody feels it, right? That is one approach. The other approach would be just saying, you guys are great, we acquired you for a reason, which is you were already great, so just kind of go do your thing, and understanding that that kind of federated model can work, right? And either one, I've seen it work really well. It's whenever you try to do neither this or that, ends up being a failure in an acquisition.
I've seen that a lot too. I think that's really good advice. Either get it integrated or leave it alone, but don't, the mushy middle. It makes a mess.
It just
Nobody really understands what's going on.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And people are not honest right away, right? Because they're kind of afraid. They want to make
Right.
sure the other party feels good about it. You end up calling merger of equals, blah, 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 all of that stuff. Those are political statements that you may have to make
Yes.
from time to time. But ultimately, being in one of the two extremes is what I've seen work.
Yeah. I think a lot of the employees on both sides, they hear that, but they're a lot smarter than we give them credit for sometimes, and I think they just see through it, and they'll wait and see what's really going to happen. Because you're right, in the early days, there's a lot of talk about how this is great for everybody, and maybe
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then there are all the promises the founder of the company that got acquired has made, that
right.
now you're dealing with those promises, right? So, right. So,
That happens, yeah,
yeah. So these are all like practically what happens, but just kind of being very clear on the thesis of why you're acquiring the company, and just dealing with it accordingly, and just integrating them fully, leaving them alone, whatever model. I think either one can work. It depends on why you acquired them, and just knowing the purpose of that.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of times buyers buy for one reason and sellers sell for a completely different reason.
It happens all the time, right? So
Yeah,
one of the things that I've seen is the acquiring, or the company that got acquired, they would be told that there'll be a lot more resources after the acquisition,
right.
right? I mean,
Done that.
yeah, right.
I've been acquired that way. I haven't told anybody that.
Yeah, 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 no. But the thesis of why somebody was acquiring was completely different, right? So,
Right.
right, and you don't know what that is, right? Oftentimes when you're selling. So yeah, it's always a little messy, but you can see companies that do it well as well, and you got to admire them and learn from them.
Yes, yes. Well, looking at it, the people aspect is one part of it, but like product and technology is another. What's maybe the most overlooked factor in making acquisition successful, specifically from product and technologies perspective?
I think the thing that is most often overlooked is the user experience, right? So you think of, because you bring engineers in, you think about how to combine this. And when I say user experience, what I mean is, what is the customer journey for them to buy products, right? So now you had a default customer experience because you're selling your products. Now you acquired a company, you brought in like two more products, right? Now, how do you go sell all this to your existing customer base? How do you keep the customer base that came with the company that you acquired? How do you cross sell to them? Right? These are all very messy things, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that goes on a spreadsheet with some assumptions, but the hard work of the user experience design, of saying, let me make it easy for my customers to cross buy. There's a reason we bought this company, and this company has two good products that we want to cross sell. And just having a good plan around it, and getting the user experiences. When I say customer journey user experience, what I mean is, how do the customers of either company look at the combined entity in terms of buying more products from you, or also just retention aspect of each of the customer bases. So just focusing on that, getting your technologies where the user experience is consistent across the board, and it feels like one company for a prospective customer who wants to buy more products from you, or just from a retention perspective. So it has to sort of be more of an integrated feel. And hopefully what you can say during this process, this cross sell process, is that, listen, we acquired this company, and there is a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario here, and this is
Right.
how you experience it, right? So be able to just focus on that, and be able to convincingly provide this value prop to customers and new prospects coming in the door, is often overlooked. You kind of look at it more as, hey, what are the APIs to integrate, what teams do we need to keep, because it's all messy at that point,
Right.
and you're forgetting the customer. Just keeping the customer in mind is what I've seen not done that well, and I would encourage everybody to think that.
That's really smart because you're right. It's a lot easier to look internal and really focus there. And that's one of the reasons I think a lot of acquisitions don't go so well is they forget about the most important part. That's the customer and making it a great experience for them. And it should be a 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah, totally. That's the entire thing, right? So even if you bought and acquired a company for their customer base, but it was not about your product, you're saying to those base that, listen, we have equivalent products, even though you'll have to give up the product that you were used to. Here is the ramp of how you get onto the new product set that we offer, and be able to be very proactive in communications, but also with data migration, training, just going all the way out. Because I think what happens in when these acquisitions happen is this huge churn right along the way. That's collateral damage.
Right.
Focusing on that, I think, is a smart thing.
Yeah. Well, where can people learn more about you and about Knownwell online?
Thanks, Jeff. We are at knownwell.com, COM. On LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mohan Rao. I'm Knownwell Chief Product and Technology Officer.
Excellent. We'll make sure and link that in the show notes. Mohan, such a great conversation. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thank you, Jeff. This was such a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Mohan, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Mohan and Knownwell at knownwell.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our channel on YouTube as well. Full video episodes, shorts, outtakes, training, lots more over there for you on YouTube. And that's at Champion Leadership on YouTube. Thought leaders share, and I'll bet you're one of those. Share this episode with someone who loves challenging the status quo. That's so good. I'll bet you know a few people like that as well, probably even yourself. Everyone who shares this week gets a personalized hologram of a penguin clapping for you whenever you do something awesome. Because, who doesn't like clapping penguins? What if video marketing could transform how your business connects with customers and drives engagement? Join us next time as Daniel Borba, founder and CEO of Spark Portal, shares how his video as a service model is helping SaaS and B2B companies scale high quality video content as a strategic growth driver. So good. And then we'll sit down with Tammy Reese, leadership expert and creator of the Learn to Lead framework. We'll discuss how executives and teams can level up their leadership skills. Tammy brings insights from her work with global tech leaders to help you unleash the leader within. And it is so good. I learned so much talking with Tammy. We've talked several times, and she is absolutely fantastic. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.
Let's go!